So you got a laptop with a high refresh rate screen, a 144 Hz in this case on an Acer Nitro, and whenever the FPS goes really high, you get a very annoying flickering on the screen. The camera has smoothed the deviations in lighting in this case, however in person this flickering is really annoying, causes eye strain and sometimes headaches. In the past, you could fix this by adjusting some settings in Intel control panel for the built-in graphics. The first setting that comes to mind is panel self-refresh. If you disable that, that would fix the issue. The other setting that comes to mind is application optimal mode. This is especially true if you get flickering only when using accelerated modes, for example hardware acceleration in your browser. However, these settings are mostly for 60 Hz screen. If we are talking high refresh rate screens, for example 144 Hz, and the display is Freesync or Gsync enabled, that means that the screen refresh rate is synced with the FPS of the game to avoid screen tearing. And basically Freesync follows your FPS. So if you have 91 FPS, the refresh rate will be 91 Hz. When your FPS rises to, for example, 100 FPS, the refresh rate will be 100 and so on. So FPS and refresh rates are linked together. And in most cases, the flickering of the brightness of such screens is caused by this Freesync or Gsync feature. The problem is the Freesync range. Normally, FreeSync displays have a range where FreeSync works, for example from 72 Hz to 144 Hz. So as long as FPS in your game is at least 72 frames per second, the screen will adjust the refresh rate to 72 Hz and everything will be fine. However, as soon as your FPS drops below 72 Hz, that means the lower margin of this FreeSync range, the refresh rate of the monitor immediately shoots up to maybe 142 Hz. And when your FPS is back to, for example, 75 frames, the refresh rate is immediately dropped to 75 Hz. Without going into much detail, the peculiarity of an LCD screen is that the faster refresh rate, the more the brightness. So when your refresh rate suddenly goes from 72 to 144, you see noticeable difference in brightness. So if your PC cannot keep up with the lower margin of the FreeSync range, and this is important, it's no problem if you get more FPS than 144 in this case. For example, if you have 200, 250 FPS, that's not the problem. The problem is the lower margin. So if your computer is not able to keep up and provide at least 72 frames all the time, then it's better to disable this FreeSync feature. It is very easy to do on the desktop. Both AMD and NVIDIA control panels have a special setting, and that's what random strangers online will advise you to do when you're asking for help with this problem. And that immediately gives away that those strangers that try to help people online have absolutely no clue what they are talking about. The problem with laptops that have dual graphics, that means some kind of inbuilt like an Intel video card and a discrete one like an NVIDIA video card, is that NVIDIA settings for such laptop lack most of the features, including the Gsync, that you need to toggle to disable this FreeSync mode. Having failed, those strangers online will start to repeat the same thing over and over and over and over again, something about installing DDU utility to cleanly remove the old drivers and then download and install the updated drivers for both of your graphic cards. First you need to install the Intel inbuilt card, then the NVIDIA one in this case, and they also will talk nonsense about preferring the driver downloads from your laptop manufacturer, since apparently, by their knowledge, laptop manufacturers actually do some changes to the NVIDIA or Intel drivers or AMD drivers to make them work on their laptops. This is utter nonsense. None of the laptop manufacturers do that. And if you stick to that advice, you will end up with a really outdated drivers for your hardware. In this case, the drivers for this Acer Nitro are at least 2 years old. The problem is the architecture of dual graphics laptops. Unlike a desktop computer, where you have monitor plugged in directly to your discrete GPU, for example an NVIDIA card, on laptops, the internal discrete GPU, for example NVIDIA card, is actually connected to the internal inbuilt Intel card, and Intel card is connected to the display. So NVIDIA outputs picture through the Intel card to the display. This is done to make the transition between the GPUs smooth, so you won't notice that. The only way to connect a display directly to NVIDIA is to plug an external display to the DisplayPort or HDMI port on your laptop. These are usually wired directly to the discrete GPU, but the internal screen that you have on your laptop is usually connected to the inbuilt graphics and not to the discrete graphics. This is the case for most laptops. There are some exceptions, but you can count those exceptions using the fingers of your single hand. They are very few and very rare. So we need to update the Intel drivers then, if everything goes through Intel. Well, you can do that using the Intel Assistant utility. It will download fresh drivers for this laptop, however, the problem will still be there. Another stupid solution you may find online is to install drivers for the PNP monitor that you have on your laptop. Basically, the PNP monitor is your laptop screen. I can only say good luck finding those drivers. And even if you do manage to find them and install them, they won't help you. And I don't even want to talk about loser solutions like forcing your screen into a 60 Hz refresh rate. Why do you want to do that if you invested in a 144 Hz screen? You probably don't want to leave that on the table. You want all the refresh rate you can squeeze out of your investment. Anyway, so we figured out that the problem with the blinking brightness on the screen is this dynamic refresh rate feature. But how to disable it? It turns out somewhere in the middle of Windows 10 lifecycle, I think it was build 1903, they actually introduced an option in Windows graphics settings to toggle the variable refresh rate on and off. The laptop in this case runs Windows 11, and naturally this feature was transferred from Windows 10 to Windows 11. Here it is, and all you need to do to fix the blinking issue is just to disable this toggle. This will work on all graphics cards, on Intel, on AMD, on NVIDIA, on all of them. And all you need to do to disable Freesync and finally get rid of that brightness blinking is to disable this feature. And this works not only on laptops. Even though you have more options on a desktop, you can probably disable Freesync through the monitor on-screen menu and also through dedicated control panels from NVIDIA or AMD and Intel Arc for that matter. You can still disable it using this inbuilt feature in Windows without going anywhere else. So this not only works for laptops, but also for desktops.
I am the god of YouTube.
Like, subscribe, thanks, jingle bells.